Before the world had shape, before gods ruled the sky, there was only silence. From that quiet ancient stories were born, not to frighten, but to comfort tired minds. Tonight, drift into the full, gentle story of Greek mythology, where gods whisper, heroes rest, and time itself slowly falls asleep. Hi guys, today we will talk about the entire story of Greek mythology. Before you get comfortable, please like and subscribe my channel Sleepsy, and also let me know in the comment your country name and what it is the time for you. It always fascinated to join us from all over the world. No dim the light, take a deep breath, and let's start our journey tonight. Before there were gods, before there was earth, before there was even time to measure anything at all, there was silence. Not the kind of silence we know today, not the quiet of a sleeping room or a calm winter night. This silence was endless. It had no beginning and no edge. There was no sound because there was nothing to hear it. No light because there were no eyes to see. No darkness either, because darkness needs light to exist. The ancient Greeks called this state chaos. But chaos did not mean noise. It did not mean confusion. It did not mean destruction. Chaos was simply empty space. An open, limitless void where nothing had yet taken shape. Imagine drifting in a place where there is no up or down, no ground beneath you, no sky above you, no wind, no stars, no ticking clock. Just a deep, calm nothingness. This is where Greek mythology begins, not with thunder, not with fire, but with stillness. And in that stillness, time did not move. Or maybe time had not yet learned how to move. There were no seasons, no days, no nights, no past or future, only a quiet waiting. And then, slowly, without effort, without struggle, something began to be. From chaos came the very first presence, not born in pain, not created by hands. It simply emerged. The Greeks called it Gaia. Gaia was the earth, but not the earth we know today. She was not mountains or forests yet. She was potential, a soft, wide presence, a place where things could exist. Gaia did not speak. She did not think in words. She simply rested within chaos, steady and patient. Soon after, another presence formed. Deep below, Gaia stretched Tartarus. Not evil, not punishment, just depth. A place of weight and distance. A quiet below, mirroring the quiet above. And then came Eros. Not love as romance. Not passion or desire. Eros was attraction, the gentle force that pulls things together. The reason the universe did not remain empty forever. Eros did not shout, he whispered, and because of that whisper, creation continued. Night and darkness appeared next. Nyx, the night. Erebus, the shadow. They moved softly through chaos, laying down the first sense of contrast. Where there had been nothing, there was now something to feel. Still calm, still slow. The universe was not awake yet. It was only beginning to breathe. Gaia, resting in this quiet space, slowly changed. She stretched, she settled, and from her came the first shapes of land. Not sharp, not violent, rolling forms, gentle curves. And above her, a new presence appeared. Uranus, the sky. He spread himself over Gaia like a blanket, wide, endless, silent. Together, earth and sky rested in balance. There was still no life as we know it, no animals, no humans, only gods and forces, ancient, patient, unhurried. Time, at last, began to move, but it moved slowly. Thousands of years could pass like a single breath, and Gaia, now whole, began to create again. From her came rivers that flowed endlessly, mountains that rose without sound, seas that stretched quietly to the horizon. Each part of the world found its place. Nothing rushed, nothing fought. This was a universe still learning itself. In later stories, gods would argue, Heroes would fight, monsters would appear, but not yet. Right now, the world was young, and young worlds sleep deeply. This is why Greek mythology begins like a dream, because it was not meant to explain science. It was meant to explain feeling, the feeling that the world is old, that something existed long before us, that silence once ruled everything. As the ancient Greeks told these stories, they imagined this beginning as a memory. Not their memory, not even the gods' memory, but the universe remembering itself, a soft, distant recollection. And as we listen now, thousands of years later, we are doing the same thing. We are remembering a time before noise, before worry, before effort, a time when nothing was expected to happen. And yet, everything did. Let that silence stay with you, because from it, the gods will soon awaken. But for now, the universe is still quiet, still breathing, still dreaming. From the deep quiet of chaos, the universe did not burst into life. It unfolded. There was no loud moment of creation, no sudden light, no clash of forces. Instead, existence stretched gently, as if waking from a long sleep. Gaia, the earth, rested at the center of this new reality. She was solid, yet calm, wide, yet patient. She did not move quickly. She did not rush to fill the emptiness. She simply was. Beneath her, Tartarus remained still and distant. Above her, Uranus, the sky, spread himself slowly across the endless space. Between them, the world found its first balance. Gaia felt the weight of the sky resting upon her, not heavy, not painful, just present. And in that presence, creation continued. Gaia did not need tools. She did not need thought. Creation flowed from her naturally, the way warmth rises from fire or waves roll across the sea. From her surface came the mountains, tall, quiet beings who stood without speaking. They did not rise violently. They emerged slow and steady, like breath lifting a sleeping chest. Next came the sea, Pontus, a vast, calm body of water stretching beyond sight. Not stormy, not dangerous. At first, the sea was gentle, smooth, reflecting the sky above it. Earth, sea, and sky now existed together. The universe had structure. Still, there was no movement of life, no footsteps, no voices, only the ancient forces settling into place. Night and darkness continued to drift quietly. Nyx, the night, wrapped the world in calm shadow. Erebus filled the spaces between with soft darkness. They did not threaten. They protected. And then, from night itself, came something new, light. Nyx gave birth to ether, the upper air, bright and clear, and Hera, the day. Day did not chase away night. They took turns, one resting while the other ruled. The rhythm of time had begun, day and night moving past one another like slow waves. Gaia watched all of this without judgment. She did not command. She did not rule. She simply allowed. And in allowing, she became the mother of many. With Uranus, the sky, Gaia brought forth the next generation. They were large, powerful, timeless. They were called the Titans, 12 in total, each representing deep forces of the world. Oceanus, the endless river circling the earth. Hyperion, the light of the sun. Theia, brightness and sight. Coes, intelligence. Craeus, constellations and order. Iapetus, mortality. And among them, two who would shape everything to come, Cronus and Rhea. Cronus was time, not measured time, but the slow, unavoidable passing of things. Rhea was flow, continuity, the endless cycle of birth and renewal. The Titans did not fight. They did not conquer. They ruled simply by existing. The world beneath them grew vast and quiet. There were still no humans, no animals, just the land stretching, the sea breathing, the sky watching. Ages passed, not years, not centuries, ages, and through it all, the Titans remained unchanged. They did not age, they did not weaken, they were part of the world, not separate from it. But even in this calm, something subtle stirred. Creation had not finished. Chaos had not fully released its hold. Because where there is time, there is change. And where there is change, there is the quiet promise of conflict. Cronus began to feel it first, a sense that nothing, no matter how powerful, lasts forever, a sense that even gods can be replaced. This feeling did not arrive loudly. It came like a shadow at the edge of thought, easy to ignore, impossible to forget. Rhea felt it too. But where Cronus felt fear, Rhea felt sorrow. She understood the cycle. Parents give way to children. The old world fades so the new can rise. This was not evil, it was nature. But Cronus did not see it that way. And so, while the world above remained calm and beautiful, something below the surface began to change. Not yet action, not yet war. Only a quiet tension, like the air before snowfall. The universe had awakened, and now, it was slowly learning how to move forward. The world now had shape. The earth was firm beneath the sky. The sea breathed along the edges of the land. Day and night passed each other without conflict. And above it all, the Titans ruled. They did not sit on thrones. They did not issue commands. They simply existed, and through their existence, the universe remained steady. This was an age without urgency. Time did not rush forward. It moved slowly, like clouds drifting across an endless sky. The Titans were vast, not only in size, but in presence. When Oceanus moved, the waters of the world followed him. Rivers curved and stretched in slow patterns, circling the earth again and again. He did not speak often. The sound of flowing water was his voice. Hyperion, the light of the sun, watched over the sky. His glow was gentle, not burning. The sun rose and set with patience. Its warmth was steady, comforting. There were no scorching days, no violent storms, only balance. Thea watched over sight and clarity. She gave the world the ability to be seen. Light reflected softly off water. Shadows rested beneath trees and hills. Nothing hid, nothing needed to. Coeus held the quiet power of understanding. He did not seek knowledge. He was knowledge. Thought itself existed because he did. Creius kept order in the heavens. Stars moved in calm paths above the earth. They did not flicker wildly. They stayed where they belonged. The sky became a map of slow, predictable motion. And Iapetus, distant and thoughtful, carried the idea of mortality. Not death as fear, but death as an ending that gives meaning to beginnings. He understood that one day, even gods would fade, but that day was not yet. At the center of them, all stood Cronus. Cronus did not look like a king. He looked like time itself, still, unmoving, always watching. He ruled not through strength, but through inevitability. Things happened because time allowed them to, and beside him was Rhea. Rhea moved where Cronus stayed still. She was the flow of life beneath time, the pulse beneath the surface of the world. Where Cronus measured existence, Rhea nurtured it. She brought gentleness to power. Together, they became the quiet heart of this age. There were no wars during the reign of the Titans, no battles for control, no screams echoing across the sky. The world did not yet know violence. It knew patience. It knew stillness. It knew long stretches of silence broken only by wind, water, and slow-moving light. Mountains did not crumble. Seas did not rage. Everything stayed as it was, for ages. So long that change felt unnecessary. So long that the idea of an ending felt impossible. But time does not stop, even when it moves slowly. And deep within Cronus, a thought began to repeat. a whisper, quiet at first. Nothing lasts forever. Cronus had heard the old prophecy, spoken by Gaia herself, a prophecy that did not shout, that did not threaten. It simply stated what always happens, that a child would one day rise, that the ruler would be replaced. That it was not punishment, it was nature. But Cronus was not ready. He looked at the world and saw peace, order, balance. Why should it change? Why should something so calm be undone? Fear took root, not sudden fear, not panic. A slow, heavy fear that settled into the chest and stayed there. Rhea noticed. She saw it in his stillness, in the way he watched the horizon longer than before. She understood the cycle. She knew that children must rise. But Cronus could not accept it. And so, while the Titans continued to rule peacefully, the seed of conflict was planted, not by anger, not by hatred, but by the fear of time moving forward. The world above remained quiet. The sky still glowed softly, the sea still breathed gently. But beneath the calm surface, destiny began to turn, very slowly, very patiently. The age of the Titans was steady, but it was not eternal. Time passed, not quickly, not loudly. It passed the way shadows move across stone, almost unnoticed unless you stop and watch. Cronus ruled the world, and on the surface nothing had changed. The sun still rose in patient arcs. The ocean still whispered against the edges of the land. The stars still followed their quiet paths. Yet inside Cronus, something had shifted. He thought often about the prophecy, not because it frightened him suddenly, but because it never left him. Gaia's words did not echo. They rested. A simple truth spoken long ago, that a child would one day rise. That time would continue forward, as it always does. Cronus did not argue with fate. He understood fate better than any god. But understanding did not make it easier to accept. He looked at the world he ruled and felt a strange mixture of pride and dread. Everything was calm. Everything was balanced. Why should that end? Why should peace give way to uncertainty? Cronus believed he was protecting the world by keeping it still. He told himself this often. Stillness meant safety. Change meant chaos. Rhea watched him grow quieter. She felt life stirring within her, warm and gentle. She carried their children, one after another. Each time, she felt hope. Each time, she believed the cycle would continue as it always had. But Cronus felt only the weight of time pressing forward. When their first child was born, the moment should have been filled with wonder. The child cried softly, a new sound in the ancient world. Rhea reached out instinctively. Cronus hesitated. He saw not a child. He saw the future moving closer. Fear overtook reason. In silence, without anger, without cruelty in his voice, Cronus swallowed the child. The act was quick. The world did not shake. The sky did not darken. Rhea froze. She did not scream. She could not. The moment passed like a dream that leaves behind a heavy feeling in the chest. Cronus told himself it was necessary. One child would prevent chaos. One sacrifice would preserve peace. But the feeling did not leave him. Then another child was born, and another. Each time Rhea hoped. Each time Cronus feared. Each time the cycle repeated. The children vanished into him, not through rage, but through control. The world outside remained unchanged. Mountains did not fall, seas did not rage, but something precious was being lost. Rhea's sorrow grew quietly. She carried life, only to see it disappear. She walked through fields that remained green and full, yet felt emptier with each passing age. She spoke softly to Gaia, not in anger, not in rebellion, but in grief. Gaia listened. The earth always listens. She felt the imbalance forming, slow and deep. This was not how the cycle was meant to continue. Life must rise as time moves forward. Stillness cannot last forever. And so, when Rhea carried another child, something changed. This time, she did not feel only sorrow, she felt resolve. When the child was born, she did not bring him to Cronus. Instead, she wrapped a stone in cloth and placed it gently in his hands. Cronus, distracted by fear and habit, did not look closely. He swallowed the stone. The world remained silent. But somewhere far away, a child cried. Rhea carried the infant away, her steps careful and quiet. She did not flee in panic. She moved with purpose to a hidden place, an island called Crete. There, caves curved gently into the earth. There, nature itself seemed to cradle life. Rhea placed the child among nymphs and caretakers. She named him Zeus. The name was spoken softly, like a secret meant to last. The child grew slowly, protected by shadows and stone, fed by the milk of a gentle goat, lulled to sleep by the sounds of wind and leaves. Far away, Cronus ruled on, unaware. He believed time had stopped. He believed the prophecy had been defeated, but time does not stop. It waits. And in a quiet cave, surrounded by soft echoes and flickering light, destiny breathed gently, not rushing, not demanding, simply growing. The world above remained peaceful. The Titans still ruled. But beneath the calm surface, the future was waking, slowly, patiently, just as time always does. Far from the halls of the Titans, far from the heavy footsteps of Cronus, there was a place where time felt softer. Crete, an island where the mountains rose calmly from the sea, and caves opened like quiet mouths in the earth. Here, the air was warm, and the wind carried the smell of grass and stone. It was in one of these hidden caves that Zeus began his life. He was small, smaller than the mountains, smaller than the sky that would one day answer to him. And yet, the world leaned gently toward him, as if it already knew. Rhea watched over him only briefly. She knew she could not stay. The risk was too great. Cronus had eyes everywhere, and fear sharpened his senses. So she left Zeus in the care of the nymphs, gentle spirits of nature who understood patience better than any god. They did not rush his growth. They did not speak of destiny. They simply cared. They fed him milk from the goat Amalthea, whose presence filled the cave with warmth. When Zeus cried, the nymphs sang softly. When he slept, they covered him with woven leaves and soft hides. Outside the cave, warriors called the curates clashed their shields together, not in anger, but in protection. So the sound would hide the baby's cries from the ears of Cronus. Noise used to protect silence. It was a strange kind of safety, but it worked. Zeus grew slowly, as all strong things do. He learned the rhythm of the earth before he learned the sound of thunder. He felt stone beneath his hands. He listened to water dripping in the cave, one drop at a time. He watched light change as day passed into night. There was no palace, no throne, only nature, steady and kind. As the years passed, Zeus changed. He became curious. He asked questions the nymphs could not always answer. Why does the sky move? Why does the wind change? Why do things grow and then stop? The nymphs smiled but said little. Some answers are not meant to come early. They told him stories instead. Stories of the Titans, slow and powerful. Stories of Gaia, the deep earth. Stories of time, which never turns backward. They did not tell him about Cronus, not yet. Zeus felt something stirring inside him, though he could not name it. A sense that he was meant to step beyond the cave one day. Not in rebellion, but in response, like a tide answering the moon. As he grew older, storms began to follow him. Not destructive storms, gentle ones. Clouds gathered when he felt strong emotion. Lightning flickered faintly when he laughed too loudly or cried too deeply. The nymphs noticed but did not fear it. They understood power when it was still young. Zeus learned restraint. He learned patience. He learned to listen. While Cronus ruled the world above, believing time was frozen, Zeus was learning what time truly meant. Growth, change, continuation. There was no anger in Zeus's heart toward his father, only a quiet understanding that the world could not remain still forever. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the cave walls in gold, Rhea returned. She stood at the entrance, older now, heavier with sorrow and hope both. Zeus recognized her instantly. Some bonds do not require memory. She sat beside him and told him the truth. About his brothers and sisters, about Cronus's fear, about the prophecy. Zeus listened without speaking. When she finished, he did not shout. He did not tremble. He simply breathed. "I will not destroy him," Zeus said softly. "I will end what must end." Rhea felt tears rise, not of grief, but of release. The child she had hidden was no longer just a child. The time of secrecy was nearing its end, but there was still no rush. Zeus remained in Crete longer, preparing without knowing it. The cave that sheltered him had done its work. He was strong now, not only in body, but in calm. And somewhere far away, Cronus sat on his throne, believing the world unchanged, believing time had stopped, but time was only waiting. And Zeus, raised in silence, was almost ready to step into the open sky. Change does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it comes like a long breath, held too long, finally released. The world of the Titans had lasted for ages beyond counting. Mountains had risen and worn down, seas had shifted their edges, stars had crossed the sky again and again. And through it all, the Titans remained, vast, powerful, unmoving. But nothing stays still forever. When Zeus finally left Crete, he did not march with an army. He did not shout his name into the sky. He moved quietly, like a thought forming slowly in the mind of the world. He went first to Metis, the goddess of wisdom and deep thought. She listened to him, not with fear, but with understanding. Metis knew that force alone never ends an age. Only wisdom does. Together, they planned not a battle, but a beginning. Cronus was still ruling, still believing time itself had bent to his will. He welcomed Zeus without suspicion, seeing only another god, grown but unthreatening. Cronus had learned to fear prophecy, but he had also learned to believe he had escaped it. That belief was his weakness. Metis gave Cronus a drink, calm and unremarkable. When he swallowed it, the past returned to him. Slowly, gently. One by one, the children he had swallowed long ago came back into the world. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, unchanged by time, waiting. There was no scream, no thunder, just a quiet shift. The old order had cracked. The Titans did not fall in a single moment. The struggle that followed, later called the Titanomachy, lasted not days, but years. 10 long years stretched thin across the earth like a drawn-out dream. And yet, it was not the loud war humans later imagined. It was slow, heavy, like mountains pressing against each other. The Titans fought because it was all they knew. They were not cruel, not evil. They were ancient. They belonged to a world that moved slowly, where change felt like loss. Zeus and the younger gods fought not to destroy, but to move forward. Lightning split the sky for the first time, not violently, but clearly. The sound echoed like a door opening. Poseidon stirred the seas. Hades watched from the shadows, already understanding the balance between life and ending. The earth trembled, but it did not break. Gaia herself felt the struggle deeply. She had given birth to both sides. She did not choose out of love or hate, but out of necessity. The world needed renewal. At last, the Cyclopes were freed, ancient beings locked away long before. They did not rage, they created. From their hands came gifts: Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, Hades' helm of shadows. Tools not of destruction, but of order. Even so, the war did not end quickly. Storms rolled across the land for years. The sky darkened, then cleared, then darkened again. Oceans rose and fell. Fire touched stone. But always there was restraint. No joy in victory, no delight in suffering, only inevitability. The Titans began to tire, not in body, but in purpose. Their time was passing. When the final moment came, it was quiet. Cronus did not beg. He did not curse. He simply stopped. The Titans were sent away, not erased, not destroyed, but placed into Tartarus, the deep and distant realm beneath the world. Not as punishment alone, but as rest. A closing chapter. The world exhaled. Mountains stood still again. Seas calmed. The sky cleared. The war ended not with cheers, but with silence. And in that silence, something new settled into place. The age of the Olympians had begun. Zeus stood beneath the open sky, thunder resting calmly in his hand. He did not celebrate. He looked outward, toward earth, sea, and shadow, knowing that ruling meant listening as much as commanding. The old gods had not been evil, they had simply been early, and now they were done. The world once again was ready to dream forward. After the long age of the Titans faded into silence, the world felt different. Not louder, not brighter, simply lighter. The storms settled. The seas breathed more evenly. The earth no longer felt pulled between past and future. It rested, as if something heavy had finally been set down. High above the land, beyond forests and clouds, stood Mount Olympus. It was not sharp or threatening. It did not rise like a blade. Olympus rose gently, wrapped in mist, its peak often hidden from mortal eyes. From below, it looked peaceful, almost ordinary, but those who came close felt something change inside them. Time slowed, thoughts softened. Olympus was not a fortress, it was a gathering place. Here, the new gods settled, not to rule through fear, but to bring balance. Zeus took his place as king of the gods, not because he demanded it, but because the others accepted it. He sat beneath open sky, thunder resting beside him, not raised. His voice was calm, his presence steady. He listened more than he spoke. Beside him was Hera, queen of the gods. She carried dignity like a quiet flame. Hera watched over marriage, family, and promise. She believed in order, in bonds that should not be broken. Though often stern, her strength was deep and patient. Poseidon, ruler of the seas, did not stay long on Olympus. The waves called to him. He was restless, emotional like the ocean itself. Calm one moment, stormy the next. Still, when he returned to Olympus, the air smelled faintly of salt and wind. Hades did not remain at all. He ruled the underworld, far below, and he preferred it that way. Hades was not cruel, he was quiet. He understood endings and he accepted them. While others ruled movement and life, he ruled rest. And so the universe balanced itself. Other gods joined them. Athena, born of wisdom and thought, calm and clear-eyed. She carried strategy instead of rage. Her presence felt like early morning light. Apollo, god of the sun, music, and healing. His days were filled with gentle brightness, his nights with poetry and sound. He brought rhythm to time. Artemis, his sister, walked the forests alone. She moved with the animals, watched over the wild, and preferred moonlight to crowds. Silence followed her, but it was a comforting silence. Demeter, goddess of harvest, cared for the growing world. Wherever she walked, fields followed. Her joy and sorrow would one day shape the seasons themselves. Aphrodite, born of sea foam, arrived softly but changed everything. Love entered the world not as peace, but as feeling, deep, powerful, and unpredictable. Hephaestus, god of fire and craft, worked quietly, often unseen. His hands shaped wonders beneath Olympus, building the tools that gods and mortals alike would rely on. Each god had a place, each role mattered. Olympus was not loud. There were no constant feasts or endless shouting. The gods gathered, discussed, watched. They observed the world below with curiosity rather than control. They were close enough to care, but distant enough to let life unfold. From Olympus, the gods could see the land stretching far below, rivers winding, forests breathing, oceans moving with steady rhythm. Humans had not yet fully arrived in their stories, but the stage was ready. Time began to feel measured. Days followed nights. Seasons slowly turned. Life learned its rhythm. The gods did not rush the world forward. They allowed it to become. And for a long while, there was peace. Not perfect peace, but balance. Zeus often stood at the edge of Olympus, looking outward, feeling the weight of what had come before. He remembered the Titans. He remembered silence before creation. He knew that order was not permanent. Nothing ever is. But for now, the world rested in steady hands. Mount Olympus remained above the clouds, watching quietly as myth began to drift closer to humanity. Far beneath the living world, below roots and stone and memory, there was another realm. Not loud, not fiery, not cruel. The underworld was quiet. It did not echo with screams or punishment. It did not burn. It did not rage. It existed the way sleep exists, deep, still, and unavoidable. This realm belonged to Hades. Hades did not rule with anger. He ruled with patience. His throne was not surrounded by flames, but by shadowed stone and soft, endless dusk. He understood something the other gods did not often think about. Everything ends, and endings are not evil, they are rest. The entrance to the underworld was not easy to find. It appeared in caves, in cracks of the earth, in places where sunlight struggled to reach. Mortals rarely stumbled upon it, and when they did, they felt a deep quiet settle into their bones. At the edge of this world flowed the river Styx. Its waters were dark and slow, not rushing. The river moved the way time moves in dreams. To cross it, souls needed passage. There waited Charon, the ferryman. He did not speak much. His face showed neither kindness nor cruelty. He simply did his duty, guiding souls across the river. Those who carried a small coin were taken gently. Those without waited, not in pain, but in stillness until their time came. Beyond the river stretched wide fields of shadow, not empty, not frightening, just calm. Here, souls walked slowly, shedding the weight of their lives. Memories softened, regrets faded. What remained was essence, quiet awareness, drifting thought. At the gate stood Cerberus, the three-headed dog. Despite the legends told by later generations, Cerberus was not a monster of terror. He was a guardian. He did not attack the dead. He only made sure that the living did not disturb the balance. Once a soul entered, it stayed, not as a punishment, as a rule. Inside the underworld were many paths. Some souls wandered gently through the asphodel meadows, a place of gray grass and quiet wandering. Here, ordinary lives rested, not rewarded, not punished, simply finished. Those who had lived with great goodness or great honor were guided farther to the Elysian fields. This place held light, not sunlight, but warmth. Peace lived there, unchanging. No struggle followed those who reached it. Deep below, farther still, lay Tartarus. But even Tartarus was distant, rarely mentioned, and not the focus of Hades' rule. It was a place of consequence, not cruelty. It existed so that balance could remain. Hades walked his realm alone most of the time. He did not seek praise. He did not desire worship. He understood that mortals feared him not because he was evil, but because they feared what he represented, the end. Yet Hades knew something else. The end of life is not the end of existence. It is a long, quiet sleep. Beside him ruled Persephone, queen of the underworld. She brought softness to shadow. When Persephone walked through the fields, faint flowers followed her steps. Where she rested, the darkness felt warmer. Her presence reminded even the dead of life's beauty. Above, when Persephone left the underworld to walk the earth, the land bloomed. Below, when she returned, the world grew quiet again. Thus, the seasons were born, not from anger, but from longing. The underworld did not hurry souls. There was no clock here, no hunger, no pain, just time stretching endlessly, like night without fear. Mortals told frightening stories about this realm, but the gods knew better. The underworld was not meant to scare. It was meant to hold, to gather all things when their motion stopped, to give the world room to keep moving. And so, while Olympus watched life unfold above, the underworld watched life settle below. Two halves of the same truth. When a mortal's final breath faded, the journey did not end. It simply slowed. And in that slow, quiet drifting, the soul found rest. Long after the gods had settled into their places, and the world had learned its rhythms, the earth remained quiet. Mountains stood tall, rivers flowed endlessly, forests breathed, but no one watched the sunrise and wondered. No one named the stars. The gods existed, but something was missing. It was Prometheus who noticed first. Prometheus was a titan, older than the Olympian gods, but unlike many of his kind, he was curious. He did not seek power, he sought understanding. He watched the world carefully, noticing small things others ignored. One morning, as the sun rose gently over the hills, Prometheus knelt beside a riverbank. The soil there was soft. He pressed his hands into the earth, feeling its coolness. Slowly, thoughtfully, he shaped the clay. Not in haste, not with force. He shaped a figure, 2 arms, 2 legs, a face tilted upward. It was imperfect, fragile, unfinished, and that was exactly what made it beautiful. Prometheus breathed into the clay, and the figure stirred. Thus, humans were born. They did not rise as giants. They did not glow like gods. They opened their eyes slowly, confused by light, shivering in the open air. Prometheus watched them carefully. He saw how they stumbled, how they learned by touching and falling. He saw their fear of the dark and their awe of the sky. Unlike the gods, humans did not know everything, but they felt everything. They named the wind. They gathered stones. They huddled together for warmth. From Olympus, the gods watched in silence. Some were amused, some were indifferent, some were uneasy. Zeus, ruler of the sky, observed humans with caution. He saw their potential and their weakness. Humans were not strong, but they were clever. Not immortal, but imaginative. They could change. At first, humans lived simply. They slept under open skies. They ate what the earth offered. They feared storms and worshipped the sun. But they suffered. Cold nights bit into their bones. Darkness frightened them. Without fire, the world was harsh and unkind. Prometheus saw this suffering, and it troubled him. Fire belonged to the gods. It was kept high on Olympus, protected, powerful. Fire meant warmth, protection, creation. Fire was knowledge. Zeus did not want humans to have it, but Prometheus believed differently. Late one night, while Olympus slept, Prometheus climbed silently. He moved like a shadow, unseen and unheard. From the hearth of the gods, he took a single flame and hid it inside a hollow reed. He descended to the earth. When humans saw the fire, they stepped back in fear. But Prometheus knelt and showed them its warmth. He taught them to feed it, to protect it, to share it. Fire changed everything. Humans cooked food, they shaped tools, they told stories by flickering light. The night no longer ruled them. From that moment, humans became something new. They were still fragile, but now they were hopeful. Zeus was not pleased. He saw the fire burning across the land and understood what it meant. Humans would grow. They would learn. They would no longer remain quiet creations. Yet even Zeus knew the fire could not be taken back. Punishment followed, as myths often say, but this story was not about cruelty. It was about choice. Prometheus chose compassion over obedience. Humans learned that gifts came with consequences, but they also learned something else. They were not alone. The gods watched from above. The underworld waited below. And in between, humans lived, briefly, brightly, imperfectly. They loved, they feared, they dreamed. They built small homes and told stories about the gods who shaped them. Over time, myths grew not as commands but as reflections, ways to understand storms, seasons, and the fragile wonder of being alive. And so, humanity took its place in the great story, not as rulers, not as servants, but as listeners, listening to the wind, listening to the earth, listening to the quiet voice inside that asks questions. The world was no longer silent, it was thinking. As humans learned to live beneath the sky, the gods above them were not as distant as they seemed. They watched, they listened, and sometimes they felt. The world of the gods was eternal, but it was not emotionless. Love drifted through Olympus like a warm breeze, and jealousy followed like a shadow just behind it. At the center of many stories stood Zeus. Zeus, the ruler of the sky, was powerful beyond measure, yet restless. From his high throne, he looked down upon the earth and its fragile humans with curiosity and longing. He loved beauty, he loved mystery, and he loved often. Sometimes he appeared as a gentle traveler, walking dusty roads. Other times, as a breeze through an open window, or a golden light at dawn. Mortals rarely recognized him for who he was, but they felt his presence. From these quiet meetings, stories were born, children with divine spark, heroes and poets, kings and queens shaped by fate. But on Olympus, Hera watched. Hera was Zeus's wife, goddess of marriage and vows. She was calm, dignified, and enduring. Yet her heart carried a steady ache. She did not rage loudly. Her jealousy was not a storm. It was slow, deliberate, and patient. Hera did not punish Zeus. Instead, she turned her gaze toward those caught in his orbit. Mortals felt her attention like a change in weather, subtle at first, then unmistakable. A journey delayed, a test made harder, a life gently twisted by fate. These were not acts of cruelty, but of wounded pride. Love among the gods was rarely simple. There was Aphrodite, born from sea foam, who embodied love itself. Wherever she walked, hearts stirred. Desire followed her like perfume. She did not choose sides, she simply existed. And in her presence, even gods lost their certainty. There was Ares, god of war, drawn to her fire. Their union was intense but unstable, passion burning quickly, leaving silence behind. There was Hephaestus, quiet and patient, who loved her differently, with loyalty rather than fire. His love was steady but often unseen. These were not loud dramas. They unfolded slowly, like glances held too long, like words not spoken. On Olympus, the gods gathered often, sharing nectar and ambrosia, speaking of mortals and stars. Beneath the surface, emotions flowed. Athena watched calmly, valuing wisdom over desire. Apollo sang songs of longing and prophecy. Artemis walked alone beneath the moon, untouched by love's pull. Each god reflected a part of the human heart. Down below, humans told stories of these gods not as distant rulers, but as familiar figures. They saw their own lives mirrored in divine tales. Love that was unbalanced, jealousy that lingered, choices that shaped destiny. These stories were not meant to frighten, they were meant to explain why love can hurt, why desire can change us, why emotions feel eternal even when lives are brief. As night fell, mortals lit fires and whispered these stories to one another. Children listened, wide-eyed, while elders spoke softly. The gods, in turn, listened back. Olympus was never truly silent, but it was never loud either. It was a place where emotion drifted like clouds, slow, shifting, beautiful, and unpredictable. And so, love and jealousy became threads in the tapestry of myth. Not battles, not thunder, just feelings, ancient, familiar, and quietly powerful. Long after the gods settled into their places on Olympus, and after humans learned to tell stories by firelight, new figures began to appear in the world. When one head was cut, two grew back. This was not a story of violence. It was a story of persistence. Some problems cannot be solved the same way twice. Some fears multiply when confronted too quickly. The Hydra taught patience. Fire was needed to seal what could not simply be removed. Then came Cerberus, the three-headed dog at the gates of the underworld. He did not attack the living. He did not chase the dead. He simply guarded the boundary. Cerberus was not evil. He was necessary. A reminder that some doors should remain closed, that rest requires separation, that the world of the living and the world of the dead must remain in balance. Even the darkest monsters carried meaning. The Cyclopes, with their single eye, were not only giants, they represented narrow vision, seeing only one thing, missing the wider world. The sirens did not force sailors to crash upon the rocks. They sang. Their danger was not violence. It was distraction. A reminder that beauty can be dangerous when it pulls us away from our path. These monsters were not meant to haunt dreams. They were meant to explain life. The Greeks understood that fear, confusion, jealousy, obsession, and grief all needed shapes to be understood. By giving them bodies, names, and stories, fear became manageable. A story told in the dark is less frightening than a fear left unnamed. And so, monsters became teachers. They appeared in myths not to destroy, but to instruct. They reminded listeners that danger exists, but so does wisdom. That fear exists, but so does calm. As fires burned low and voices softened, these stories became less about terror and more about understanding. Children learned that monsters could be faced. Adults learned that monsters often live inside us. And the night passed more peacefully because of it. In Greek myth, darkness was never absolute. There was always meaning within it, and meaning, once understood, allows the mind to rest. In the world of Greek myth, nothing rushed toward an ending. Everything moved at its own pace. Time was not a straight line. It was a slow river, winding through valleys of gods and mortals alike. Above all beings, above even Zeus himself, were the Fates. They did not rule with thunder or fire. They did not shout or command. They worked in silence. Three sisters, seated beside a loom that never stopped. Clotho spun the thread of life, beginning each story with a gentle motion of her fingers. Lachesis measured the thread, deciding how long each life would stretch across time. Atropos cut the thread, ending the story without anger or mercy. They were not cruel, they were inevitable. The gods feared them, but not with panic, with respect. Because even immortals understood that time touches everything. Prophecies in Greek myth were never loud announcements. They arrived as whispers, a dream, a warning, a quiet feeling that something could not be avoided. Attempts to escape fate only tightened its hold. Cronus tried to stop time by swallowing his children. He failed. Heroes tried to avoid prophecy. They fulfilled it. This was not punishment, it was balance. The Greeks believed that peace came from acceptance, not resistance. To know that every beginning holds an ending, and that endings are not enemies, they are rest. Time itself was personified in subtle ways. Chronos, slow and endless, moving forward without concern for emotion. And Kairos, the perfect moment, arriving briefly and leaving just as quietly. Together, they shaped existence. Not everything lasts forever, not even gods. Myths began to fade, not because they were forgotten, but because the world changed. People stopped building temples. Statues weathered in the rain. Priests grew old without replacement. Stories that were once spoken aloud became written words. Written words became memories, and memories became echoes. But the Greeks never believed stories truly died. They believed stories went to sleep, waiting for someone to remember. The gods did not vanish. They became ideas. Athena became wisdom. Apollo became music and light. Hades became the peaceful acceptance of death. Zeus became the sky itself. In this way, mythology ended without ending. It simply softened, just like the night when sleep arrives without being noticed. The fates did not cut the final thread loudly. They placed it down gently. The world continued. Children were born. Stars still crossed the sky. And somewhere, someone whispered a story beside a fire. Time moved forward, but meaning remained. And meaning, once placed into story, never truly fades. It only waits. Belief does not disappear all at once. It fades the way daylight fades at the end of a long evening. Slowly, quietly, almost kindly. In ancient Greece, there was no single moment when people woke up and decided the gods were gone. There was no announcement, no final prayer, no last sacrifice that marked an ending. Instead, belief loosened its grip little by little. Temples still stood, but fewer people came. Statues still watched over cities, but no one repaired the cracks. Priests still remembered the old words, but fewer children learned them. The world was changing, and it did so without drama. New ideas traveled across the land on dusty roads and across wide seas. Traders brought not only goods, but stories. Philosophers asked questions that did not need divine answers. Empires rose that spoke different languages and worshipped different gods, and slowly the Olympians stepped back. They did not leave in anger, they faded with dignity. The Greeks had once seen the gods everywhere, in thunder, in love, in war, in harvest, in dreams. But as time passed, people began to see these things as parts of the world itself, not messages from Olympus. Thunder became weather, love became emotion, war became politics, fate became chance. The gods were still remembered, but they were no longer needed to explain everything. Temples that once echoed with hymns grew quiet. Wind moved through broken columns. Birds nested where offerings once lay. Moss crept across marble floors that had felt countless bare feet. The silence was not sad. It was peaceful. Stories changed shape. They were no longer prayers spoken to please the gods. They became tales told to children, lessons whispered by elders, poems written for beauty rather than worship. The gods moved from the sky into the mind. Zeus no longer ruled storms, but represented authority and power. Athena no longer walked city streets, but lived in the idea of wisdom. Aphrodite no longer rose from the sea, but stirred in the human heart. They became symbols, and symbols are quieter than gods. As centuries passed, new beliefs took root. New rituals filled the calendar. New sacred places were built. The old temples stood beside new ones, then behind them, then forgotten at the edge of towns. Yet even as belief faded, respect remained. People did not curse the old gods. They remembered them fondly, like ancestors, like grandparents whose stories still mattered, even if their rules no longer did. Greek myths survived because they adapted. They slipped into art. They became sculptures and plays. They lived in theater masks and epic poems. They entered philosophy, psychology, and language. Words like chaos, narcissism, titanic, and panic carried the echoes of gods long silent. The myths became mirrors instead of commandments. They showed people who they were: fear, love, jealousy, hope, time. These things did not disappear when belief faded. If anything, the stories became more human. The gods were no longer distant beings on a mountain. They were reflections of the mind, of emotion, of experience. The Greeks may have stopped worshiping Zeus, but they never stopped wondering about power. They may have stopped praying to the fates, but they never stopped asking why life unfolds the way it does. And so the myths rested. They did not die. They slept, waiting for someone, centuries later, to open a book, to listen to a story, to feel something ancient stir inside them. Belief faded, but meaning remained, and meaning is harder to erase than faith. The night grew quieter. The gods stepped back into shadow, not gone, just resting. At the end of all stories, there is quiet. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that feels full, like the pause after a long day, when the world finally stops asking for anything. Greek myths were never meant to shout forever. They were meant to be remembered, and then rested. Imagine the world now, long after temples have crumbled and altars have cooled. The gods no longer argue on Mount Olympus. The thunder sleeps inside distant clouds. The sea rolls gently without a name spoken to command it. Everything is still. The myths have returned to the place they came from, the human mind. They drift now like dreams, not urgent, not demanding, just present. When people first told these stories, they did so by firelight. They spoke slowly, carefully. The myths were shared in the evening, after work was done, when bodies were tired and minds were open. In many ways, they were always bedtime stories. Stories to explain why the world feels the way it does, why love hurts, why time moves forward, why loss is unavoidable, why hope survives. Greek mythology never promised perfect endings. It promised understanding. That is why it still matters. Even now, when belief has faded, the stories remain comforting, familiar, gentle in their wisdom. They remind us that fear has always existed, and so has courage, that jealousy has always existed, and so has love, that people have always wondered who they are and why they are here. The gods rest because we no longer need them to rule the sky, but we still need stories to rule the night. When you hear about Zeus, you hear about power and its dangers. When you hear about Athena, you hear about wisdom earned slowly. When you hear about Hades, you hear about death without cruelty.